People end potential relationships over just one sentence. And they say, I just didn't feel a spark. But are we giving too much credit to something that might not deserve it? I mean, after all, does the spark mean that you have romantic chemistry? Or is it a signal for anxiety? Or do you just have a tummy ache before your date? This is The Realistic Romantic, and you just walked in on your date with Drew. I'm your golden retriever boyfriend, here to help you navigate modern dating without losing yourself in the process. And today is a very special episode because joining me on this date is my best friend, Jacob from San Antonio, Texas. Jacob works in product marketing in the tech field. He's been married to his husband, Matt, for many, many years, and he is one of my favorite people to overanalyze everything with. And today we are going to be overanalyzing the spark. Jacob has some very strong opinions about this, and as someone who's been in a solid relationship, we're going to get his take on first impressions, chemistry versus anxiety, and whether the spark should be a guiding compass or if it should be a signal to completely ignore. So let's get to know Jacob better with his relationship status update. So, Jacob, can you give us your current relationship status like it's an old Facebook post from 2011?
First of all, so excited to be here on the pod with my bestie. So 2012 Facebook status is relationship. It's complicated. No, I'm just kidding. It's complicated because we're still so in love despite not following that stereotypical spark that most people are searching for. But really, we're married for 5 years, together for 9, and big fan of my husband, Matt.
Big fan. Everyone's a fan of Matt. What is like something about marriage that people like don't necessarily expect or that you didn't expect going into it, or kind of like what's your like long-term, your LTR secret?
Matt and I have a bit of a non-traditional view on marriage. And so we were already sort of acting like we were married before we got married. And so I think that I was expecting there to be like more of a change. Like you kind of like re-enter the house and now you're married and you weren't before. But I kind of found that we settled into a very similar dynamic, but it did come with some different process changes, like we now file our taxes together. So I think the surprising thing for me is that it's not as like big of a change as I would have expected it to be.
Okay, so like the wedding didn't have a spark either, then now you just file taxes together.
The wedding did have a spark. I viewed it as like this big party to celebrate a commitment to each other, but we already were like so committed and so in love that it was like this good chance to kind of bring family in on it and to celebrate us. I just think that it didn't necessarily like feel night and day different, and we like continued to have that like strong, solid, ongoing foundation. It wasn't necessarily this like new honeymoon spark.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people do expect that, like for marriage to feel like super different. But I guess really marriage is just like the formality of like formalizing like you're already committed LTR.
And I'm also a big believer that like marriage shouldn't necessarily be surprising. Like I've heard of cases where people like get married and then find out things like my partner's like lifelong dream is this. And ideally that's like something that you know before you're married and you have that really like strong communication, connection, understanding, mutual respect, love with your partner before tying the knot.
Marriage shouldn't be surprising is a very good advice. I don't think you want to be surprised after you've like signed something binding.
Read the terms and conditions, read the fine print.
Read the fine print before you get married. So obviously, you have a successful relationship with your husband, Matt, but you do not think that a relationship needs a spark to get started, or maybe I think you're a little bit more anti-spark, just like in general. So before we kind of get into your feelings about the spark, can you kind of tell us how things started with Matt? Because I'm assuming things did not start with a spark.
This is where I throw you a curveball and say that it did start with a spark. And so I think like plot twist, a spark is definitely valid in those very early days. Like it's great to have a honeymoon phase. So the story of me meeting Matt, I was still in college actually, and I was on Accutane. And the reason that that's important is because if y'all don't know Accutane, it's this acne medicine and you like get very dry skin, and I truly felt like a reptile. And so I didn't date anyone for a year. I was like, this is my self-care. I'm going to get these great skin and no boys allowed. And so I had taken my last Accutane pill in San Antonio on a trip to float the river. And one of our friends that we were traveling with introduced me to this guy named Matt. And so I kind of was like emerging from my cocoon. There was this
So it was fate and destiny that you took your last Accutane pill and the day that you met Matt.
I would have never thought that pharmaceuticals could be a sign of fate or destiny, but here we are. And so I started to kind of like feel those feelings of attraction and also like feeling like beautiful and coming into my own after this like metamorphosis, if you will. I definitely made the first move. I was like quite forward with like I flirted with Matt, and so he could like pick up what I was laying down. I thought he was handsome. I thought he was smart. I thought he was charming, and I was interested. And so I kind of just like shot my shot a bit without directly asking, but it was clear that I was interested.
How did you shoot your shot? What
I
was
remember,
your line?
oh my gosh, one of my lines was I remember I would like ask people their relationship status when I was kind of interested because
So just like this podcast.
just like this. Literally, the opening line was my opening line. Are you flirting with me? I'm married. It was like, are you single? Are you dating? Like, what's your vibe right now? And he was like, oh, I'm single. And I was curious to learn more than just like single. And so I asked, like, are you like single and loving it? Like, this is your bachelor era? Are you like single and sad? Like, you're like looking to cuff with someone? Or are you like single, single? Like you're not necessarily living it up as a bachelor, but you're not sad about it. And he answered single, single. And so that's still kind of like a line that I'll like reference to this day, 10 years later. I'm like, remember when you said you were single, single?
So you were single, single, and now you're married, married,
Yeah. Hopefully married and thriving.
married
We'll
and
move that one
thriving.
up the scale.
So kind of in this relationship, did you feel like take me to like the first date, like you met, like you had some attraction. I think attraction is like different than like a spark because it's like you're curious, you're asking questions. It doesn't sound like it was like immediately love at first sight, like to your knowledge, it like turned out to be. So like kind of take me through like first date territory. Let's go on a journey. What were the feelings? What was the date? What was the vibe? Was there a spark?
Yes. And a fun story here is that, like, for our first date, I wasn't totally sure it was a date, which pro advice to myself 10 years ago, probably like ask if you're not sure. But naive me was like, I'll figure it out while I'm there. And so Matt had ended up asking for my phone number from his friend, texting me and saying, next time you're in town, like, would love to kind of get dinner and hang out. And I was like, did he just think that I was a cool fellow San Antonian and wants to like find some cool restaurants and go to a bar? Or is there more there? And so we went to dinner. We went to a restaurant called Feast, which is no longer in San Antonio, but it was this like super
All right.
cool conceptual moment. And then they actually did like a revival that we went to a couple years ago, which was sweet because it was our first date. But we went to this like tapas style restaurant. He paid for it. And then he was like, I'll get dinner, but you can get drinks at the bar. And so I didn't know if it was one of
So
those.
at this point, were you still questioning if it was a date?
I was still questioning if it was a date because
It sounds
I'm
like a date.
I also like can sometimes be more oblivious than I would like to be in. And so I was like, okay, like cuz I never want to be this is like the anxious part of me. I never want to be caught off guard. And so I'm like, I don't want to think it's a date. And then he's like, this isn't a date, and I look silly. So in my mind, I'm like protecting myself. And I was like, what if this is like that friend situation where they're like, you get coffee and I'll get drinks, like one of those trades. So we're at the bar, I get drinks, we're drinking, and then as we're kind of like talking and connecting, it like dawns on me and I'm like, this is a date. And so I kind of like take the rest of the night with that context in mind as I realize that we're on a date. And so start to like ask more questions and kind of like feel the spark for what could be.
So was there an actual spark or was the spark just like recognition that you actually were on a date? A moment of clarity.
A moment of clarity. ¿Por qué no los dos is maybe my answer to that one, to where it was like I wanted to be on a date. So
Yeah.
I thought he was a great catch. And I was like, I want this person to like me because I am really interested in him. But I wasn't totally sure. And so once I kind of confirmed it, I like allowed myself to have those butterflies and that spark and get like swept away in the feelings. So it was
I feel
like
like for you, like this description of getting swept away is still like very grounded and practical because I feel like when I have felt the spark with someone, I've been like, what if we get married tonight?
And my spark is like, oh my gosh, what if he wants a second date? Like, I think that I'm much more confident now, but 21-year-old Jacob like needed so much more confidence. And so I think that if you have enough anxiety, you don't necessarily have to worry about the negative impacts of the spark.
And I think kind of touching on this like anxiety feeling is like a feeling that a lot of people get confused with the spark because I think there's like a very like subtle difference between like anxiety and excitement or like anxiety and chemistry. And this is actually a really good segue to a little game that I prepared that's called Is It the Spark? Is it Anxiety? Or is it a tummy ache? So, if you're down to play this game, I'm going to give some scenarios and I want to get your take on is it a spark? Is it just anxiety? Or is it a tummy ache?
I'm very down to be the authority on this as someone who is both anxious and whose tummy often hurts, and I'm being very brave.
Hot girls always have hurt tummies. Number one, you can't eat before a first date.
I'm gonna call that anxiety and or tummy ache because there's times when I can't eat because I'm anxious or because my tummy aches. And so a combo of the two, or either
Two
or.
for one. Okay, they haven't texted back all day and you're convinced yourself that they're ghosting you.
That's my classic anxiety. So,
Anxiety.
anxiety.
You keep checking Hinge to see if they've updated their profile.
That's anxiety verging on gonna give myself a tummy ache territory because if I keep checking their Hinge, I am going to spiral.
You are waiting for them to arrive on a date and your Apple Watch sends you a heart rate notification to calm down.
I am gonna call that one the spark. I think that like that's like a healthy amount of like we can call it excitement.
Okay, so you think a medical alert is a healthy amount for a spark?
I often have a high pulse for other reasons, so if it's because the cute man is coming to pick me up, I'll call it excitement.
Okay. You replay the entire date in your head before falling asleep.
I'm gonna call this one spark / anxiety. For like, if I'm replaying it in my head and I was like, oh my gosh, like it's so much, it was so great, like what an amazing time, I'm so happy, and I'm going to sleep peaceful, spark. If I'm replaying it like...
I immediately thought anxiety. Like replaying every moment and what went wrong.
I was gonna say that's the anxious lens. If you're like, why did I say this? Why did I do this? But if you're like if you're savoring it, basking in it, we can call it the spark.
Okay. You feel calm sitting next to them.
Spark.
Yeah. You already know what song you'll dance to at your wedding, and it's your second date.
I need like a secret fourth category for this one because that's like none of the three.
Delusion.
Yes, okay, delusion.
You accidentally had 3 iced coffees and no food before meeting them on your date.
I'm gonna call this tummy ache because
Tummy ache.
three iced coffees, no food, my tummy hurts.
Tummy ache. You have to poop 5 minutes before every first date, no matter what.
One, I don't poop, but if I did, I would call that also tummy ache / anxiety combo.
You smile every time their name pops up on your phone.
Depending on when this is in the relationship, it is initially a spark, but if like I was smiling every single time Matt texted me 10 years later, that's kind of where I'm like, maybe the spark doesn't exist. Like you don't need to like cheese every time you get a message from your like 10-year partner.
So when Matt texts you that like you need to go to the grocery store, that doesn't like warm your heart to see his name on your phone.
Thankfully, he doesn't text me to go to the grocery store. In the case that he did text me to get groceries, I would not smile.
You feel disappointed when the date ends because you wanted more time together.
I'll call it, that's a spark.
I think that's a spark too. And you convince yourself that they're losing interest because they used one less emoji than usual.
That's anxiety. Love yourself,
Hardcore
girl.
anxiety.
Don't overanalyze the emojis. And while I have the mic, send the double text, send the triple text. I am a firm believer in like being pretty authentic early on in the relationship to where I'm not gonna overanalyze, but I'm also not gonna hide myself. And this is kind of like what you get. And it worked out for me.
Double texter. And then finally, the last one, you share a milkshake together, like cute 1950s date style, even though you're lactose intolerant.
This one is spark / tummy ache. And while I'm on milkshake discourse, you should not have 2 milkshakes. And I'm talking to you, Heartstopper.
True, we do need to cut down the dairy. Okay, so I think we've like identified that clearly like some feelings that you're having on a date could potentially feel like a spark, but like they might be anxiety or they might be something else to look at entirely, like delusion or being a little bit unhinged. So We're gonna get into like the meat of this segment. The spark isn't what you think it is. So when people come and they're talking to you like about a first date that they had and they said like I didn't feel a spark, I'm like ghosting them or I'm moving on. What do you think is like really going on there? Like, do you think they honestly don't have a connection or do you think that's like deeper?
Think that it's valid to want to feel some chemistry and spark when meeting new people. I think that like reserving it to just a first date is probably too critical because I definitely have heard of people who like developed into things. Like maybe the first or second date didn't go like as great as you thought, but then the third really like blew you away. So I think that three strikes you're out, you know, let's not like cut people from the first one unless they do something especially egregious. But I also think that the spark that people are looking for might just be kind of that like Taylor Swift, that's the way I loved you, screaming and fighting and kissing in the rain. And like that's something that I thought I wanted when I was a lot younger, like that like explosive love. And then I evolved my like opinion of what love is. And I was like, oh, you know, like screaming and fighting and having that like explosive emotions like isn't what
It's
I consider.
exhausting.
It's exhausting. Like I was like a spark, but also perhaps like a fire or an explosion. And I like,
A spark could be a fire. We don't necessarily want an uncontrolled fire.
yes, stop forest fires.
I agree that I feel like you can't like judge like a first date as like pure spark material and go like purely off of a first date. I feel like we've kind of entered this territory in dating where I feel like a lot of people are expecting the other person to like perform a lot. Like I think we're expecting like everyone to have their dating profiles kind of like optimized to be like this perfect advertisement of like who this person is. And it's like not everyone has a marketing degree. So like not everyone is going to be able to curate this like perfect profile that's like makes your heart flutter. And the people that can do that are leveraging something that like might not even be there. And then the idea that you're going on a first date and that you are not only expected to kind of get to know someone and like manage your anxiety, you're also expected to like perform like you're just were cast in a rom com, I think is asking way too much of like the other person.
I completely agree. And something that I talk about a lot in therapy, love therapy, is that we have like different days. So you have like your best days, you have your worst days, and you have your baseline. And expecting yourself to always perform at your best day is literally not possible because it's like your best day for a reason. So there's times that you're going to go on a date and it's not going to be your best performance. And so I think that again, like not holding someone to like the performance of like one date when there's like so many things that could be happening in their life and like giving them a couple of chances is going to pan out better in the end.
Yeah, because then if you like have like the slow burn, like you're not going to be able to like identify a slow burn from like date one.
And that's on Casey Musgraves.
Yeah, a love expert. You kind of touched on like Taylor Swift. I think like, do you think that we have like a certain expectation from like pop culture of like love songs and movies and like rom coms of like what that initial first date should be? And do you think that kind of plays into like this best day, like best performance and like that we're all kind of like expecting this to happen as a baseline, which like just like not possible?
I love that you asked that because this is something that I ruminate on quite a bit. And I'm like an avid consumer of pop culture and movies and TV shows and books. And I love to kind of get like swept away into these fantasy worlds. But when you're seeing a love story or a rom com, it's like a 2 hour show. And our lives are 24-hour days that happen over and over and over again. And so it's like very easy to pack a spark and these like beautiful moments into these very finite moments of time, but it's a much longer commitment, investment, and like just a completely different motion when you're like loving someone in real life. So I think that
Yeah, because the spark kind of does exist with like a time constraint. Like a spark is like a split second of an event. Like even like a firecracker spark is like a split second. So
yes,
like how do you sustain a split second for 24 hours a day for the rest of your life?
not achievable. Don't task me with it. And I
Not
think that
achievable.
that's what a goal of mine is with talking about this is like a lot of people feel maybe guilty or obligated, like something's wrong with me for not feeling that explosive spark love all the time, especially as relationships get longer, like 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And I think love becomes this much more consistent, foundational, stable way that you show up every day. And like when Matt feeds the dogs, because I just like am so tired that morning, like to me, that's like that's a spark. Like those like little acts of love that build up over
The new
time.
spark.
The new spark. Your partner feeds the dogs in the morning when you're tired.
True romance. And so I guess it's also kind of like what you're describing. I think, especially since you have like longer term relationship experience, like, does this kind of like calm stability feel boring? Or do you think people are worried that, like, if their relationship isn't this like fiery, dramatic thing, that they're going to be bored? And like, is that in itself kind of like the toxicity behind like chasing the spark?
Definitely think you're onto something there with there's like this fear of becoming static or things growing stale or growing boring. And that's why it's super important to always invest in and continue to nurture your relationship, not so that it necessarily feels like a spark, but things like setting up date nights, staying curious about your partner. It becomes a lot of work to maintain a long-term relationship. And it is, in my opinion, a lot easier to kind of like fall in love over and over again with new people. And then eventually you reach that same point where you like know everything about them and it's this different place. And Hilary Duff put out a great album about this, Luck or something. And it's like a really interesting theme that she explored after being in a long-term marriage as well, is that feeling of like, have I felt everything that I'm ever going to feel? Tell me that won't happen. And so that's kind of this line that's really stuck with me and also is like inspiring action of
Yeah, and then
don't
I would say, like, that could be, like, cyclical, because I think there is, like, the dating pieces that people really know, and that's, like, kind of like, okay, 1st date, 3rd date, I like to use, like, 3 months, 6 months, and I feel like kind of at, like, 6 months or, like, a year, you kind of do know the foundation of that person. And then it's like, okay, if you wanted to like chase something like new and familiar, you could like do it all over again with like someone else and like feel all of those like first moments again. Or I think you're kind of like at this like intersection where you're like, okay, like, do I push on and kind of go into this like new territory and see like what unfolds, even though it's going to be much more, it's going to come from a different energy because it's going to be much more like foundational and stable than it is going to be like new and exciting, but it's still going to be like new stuff in some ways.
totally. And I think another thing to look out for is that like grass is always greener syndrome. Sometimes when you're in things, they feel you're feeling them for what they are, and then you could kind of look at what something else could be and idolize it and not necessarily really think about all of the cons, drawbacks, or thinking about that new person probably has equal or more flaws that would be like challenging to deal with if you're kind of like struggling with certain issues in a relationship.
Yeah, I think like really people are trying to like use chemistry as a baseline for like compatibility. I think that's kind of what the spark like boils down to. But I think you could have really good chemistry with someone and like not be compatible with them at all for some of like life's boring moments and this kind of like 24/7 like how you're living with them, because I think chemistry can be really fun. Like it's really fun to go to like a fireworks show, but like I don't think you want to live with fireworks going off 24/7 in your house either.
I do not like loud noises that keep me up at night. So say no to loud fireworks 24/7.
Oh, one thing that you like mentioned is like now, like not waking up early, feeding the dogs, kind of doing these simple things. Like that's like the green flag spark that you're looking for. Do you feel like there were like things when you were younger and like first dating that you thought were green flags and like thought were like sparks and excitement that like were maybe actually red flags?
I think the youth has now termed as like love bombing, where someone shows too much love too fast. When I was younger, that is what I thought love looked like. And so someone meeting you on the first date and is like, you're unlike anyone I've ever met before. Like everyone else I've dated is horrible and you're solving all these problems. Insecure, naive me was like, my gosh, like, well, obviously
Oh my God, I'm so great.
I'm great and I'm perfect and I'm exactly what this person has always needed. And then obviously that doesn't work out. And so what I thought was this green flag of that initial, just like huge, you're unlike anyone else moment is now very red flag to me. I'm like, nope, I want you to have had a stable relationship before. I was like, I don't date. So this is just like my imagination. But I was like, if I were in the dating scene, I would want them to have had some type of relationship before, to have had to navigate a heartbreak and like not be the first person that is going through all of those experiences with them as they develop and like learn about themselves.
Yeah, someone has to be the first person though, and good luck to them.
That's true. I was like, I felt when I said that, I was like, okay, I feel bad because some people like are late to the dating scene. Like, hopefully they've had to like navigate difficult interpersonal situations and they're not going through that for the first time with you.
Yeah, if someone thinks you're unlike anyone they've ever met before because you know how to communicate your feelings, that might be a challenge. Okay, and I have another game prepared for you if you're down to play. It's a game of red flag, green flag, Spark Edition.
How topical.
How topical. It's like I planned this. So, are you ready to play?
I'm ready. I love a game.
Okay, red flag, green flag. They tell you they've never felt this way before about anyone, and it's your first
I
date.
think I might have just said that one. But for emphasis,
Red flag.
big, bright red flag.
They tell you that they deleted all of their dating apps after your first date.
This one is also a red flag in that they're telling me. Like, I don't know if I would feel that way if they didn't tell me.
Or you wouldn't know.
Well, I wouldn't know. Okay, fair.
So,
Red flag.
red flag, too much commitment too soon. They're excited about you, but they say that they want to take things slow.
Green flag. I
Green
think
flag.
that it's great that they're self-aware with what they're looking for. They're communicating that to you in an effective way. So, Jacob approved.
Jacob approved. They say, I know you're the one, and it's been 1 week.
Another red flag. This is getting into that love bombing territory of too much too soon, where it never ends well, unfortunately.
But they make you feel calm instead of confused.
Green flag from the highest peak. That's something that I feel with Matt a lot. And Matt has had this like amazing presence that grounds me. And so for me, like it's a big green flag to kind of find your complement. And then also the other way around, if you're the grounded one, finding a partner that like gets you out of your shell and challenges you in different ways.
Balance. They feel comfortable trauma dumping to you for 2 hours on your second date.
I paused for a second because I'm like, I feel like I have a tendency to overshare. And so I'm like wondering like the level of oversharing that is
2 hours of straight trauma dumping. Like you are their therapist on this date.
I am not a licensed therapist and I did not sign up to be one on that date. So red flag.
Red flag. If you want a trauma date, hire someone to trauma dump to.
And pay me. Pay me if you.
They decide to start planning a vacation for the two of you after your third date.
It's
You haven't been to their house yet.
Did you add that to make sure it was a red flag? No, that was a red flag. I was being totally selfish, and I was like, "How nice is this vacation?" Like I was like, "Am I? I don't know, dating a very successful person that's like, do you want to go to Italy for 2 weeks?"
Try not to be lured in by the vacation. They tell you up front that they sometimes lose interest when they know that the other person's into them.
I think that this I'm gonna call like a beige flag, and the reason I say that is because this could maybe be done in like a couple of ways. I'm seeing the positive of like they're self-aware, they're communicating, maybe they're like observing a pattern and they're like wanting you to like be involved in like helping break that. Also, the red flag is if this is kind of like that cocky excuse that gets used to kind of like ghost people or in relationships over and over again. So I'm calling it beige because like I could see both sides, and I'm like very big on open communication. And so if they were like open communicating and working on themselves, I think that's redeemable.
So I think it's a red flag. And I think it's a red flag because I feel like it falls into this territory of like using therapy speak to excuse your actions and being like, well, this is how I feel. So it's okay for me to do it to you.
And see, if they were using it as a way to say it's okay for it to happen, that's where I go into red flag. But if someone like genuine, like there's times where like I have a tendency or a habit and I really am working on it, but I want to like share it with someone in case I like slip up. I'm like seeing myself in both sides.
Maybe yellow. We can give them like, it requires follow-up
Yellow's
questions.
better than beige. Yellow, we'll call it yellow.
So that's the end of that game. I feel like you did a great job. You could totally be a lifeguard with these like flag waving.
A lifeguard, a
Color guard,
a traffic director.
So moving into our final segment of the pod, when the spark burns out, it kind of like leaves you being like, okay, what actually keeps two people together? So what do you think it is that like has kept you and Matt together in your relationship beyond like those like initial feelings and the initial excitement? And like, why are you still here almost a decade later?
Yes, and I actually like had a thought earlier that I didn't get out, and this is reminding me that this was literally like the soapbox that I wanted to go on. So
Perfect.
beautiful setup. I think that having shared values and like knowing what your core values are and what is really important to you, and then finding a partner whose values align with that, that is the strong foundation. So like Matt and I from the very beginning were very aligned on how we saw the world, how we wanted to spend our time, what we thought success looked like. And so we always kind of have that like guiding compass to go back to of like, is this aligned with those like mutual values that we have? And so I see that as this like framework that eventually replaces that spark or that chemistry, because that doesn't burn out. It is something that can like slowly evolve over time, but it just gives you that safe place to go back to.
Yeah, I think that's like so perfect. I think like the perfect recipe for like a successful relationship is having the same values and then different interests. Because then you're kind of operating on this like similar framework in how you operate and go through the world, but then like you both have things that are special and unique to you. And so I think people often get that like reverse and they try to go after the people who have the same interests. And they're like, well, I want someone who like loves hiking or like loves yoga or like loves the same things that I do so that we can do them together. And I think the whole point is like, you want someone who can like operate the same as you and kind of like think similarly and understand you. And then I think it's good to have that person with different interests that you're like exposed to more and you can try new things and you like get out of your shell a little bit.
Totally. I remember I was dating during 2016. And so it was well, now we're in a very political time, but also back then it was this big political time. And so one of my first date questions, we can call this one a yellow flag, but I would ask, like, who did you vote for as a part of my vetting process before I asked if someone liked hiking or what they did for fun. And so I kind of always knew that I wanted those shared foundations. And so, like, very quickly vetted for that in a dating process. And so, yes, I think that, like, just because we both play pickleball or volleyball, it doesn't mean we're going to be a good match. It's like thinking about, like, what do we think a great world for everyone looks like and like how we get there and how people should be treated and things like that.
Yeah, and I think like even on like a smaller level than that, kind of like how do you want like the political world of your household to operate? Like what do you value in like your home and like how you're like living like your like personal lives like too. That's actually like the framework for like the app that I'm building. So I'm building the realistic romantic app and like literally the first step is like you're not dating anyone. The first step is you're dating yourself and you're like if you haven't figured out like what your values are and like what you truly value in a relationship, you're mapping all of that out. Cause I really do think that's the first step. Cause otherwise you're just like throwing pickleballs on like a pickleball court, trying to like hit someone that like will go on a date with you. And you have like no framework for like if you'll work together.
And I love that. I find core values exercises so helpful in even understanding myself and introspection. I think it's underrated and kind of thinking about like why you feel the way you do and what you care about, what is important to you. Sitting with those questions is definitely
Yeah.
pre-work for your first date.
To date someone, you first have to date yourself. Okay, I do have one final game for you. Since you are married, I have a hot or not married edition.
Ooh,
So if you're down to play, we can get started with that.
I was born to be the arbiter of what is hot or not in marriage.
Okay, hot or not. First one, separate bathroom.
Hot.
Second,
Ooh, I was like, we're rapid firing. I need to go on my soapbox. Well, we live in a small home, so it's like a single sink, not a double vanity type thing, and we both need to brush our teeth at the same time. So it's nice to like have your own space.
separate bathrooms. Okay, separate bedrooms.
I think it's good to have a guest bedroom that is flexible. So we have
An emergency bedroom.
an emergency bedroom. That sounds more scary than it is. We have 2 dogs and they're large dogs. And sometimes they will decide that they're sleeping with us and we will try to make that work. But then always at like 2 a.m, someone's like, I need to bail to the guest bedroom and cede the bed to the dogs. So it's good to have the option.
So a backup plan. Going on separate vacations.
I've never traveled alone and I think like work trips cover that. If you have someone who travels for work, like Matt will even
We're
travel,
making this recreation. This is a voluntary trip by yourself.
then you better bring me.
Going to bed at different times.
I'm gonna say not hot for us because you end up waking the other person up. We're both very light sleepers, and so we like to kind of like at least within like a
Respect the bedtime.
30-minute or 1 hour windows.
Okay. Watching separate TV shows.
Hot.
Scheduled date nights.
Hot.
Joint bank account.
It doesn't have to necessarily be like the same bank account, but sharing finances is hot.
Okay. Sharing a phone password.
Knowing your partner's phone password is hot, but having the same one is a little bit weird.
I was thinking of it as like sharing it with the other person versus having the same exact one. That seems like a security risk.
Drew's my best friend and we have the same bank account password and phone password and
Running errands together.
hot. I love partner in crime.
Couples therapy just because, just for fun.
Hot. I've been like watching so much Dr. Orna lately.
Costco dates.
Hot. I'm lumping that in the errand bucket, but like
No, it's different. Like you're going like on the date to Costco and you're like getting a hot dog and like a popcorn and you're sitting there and it is like your Friday night.
fuck it, I'll call it hot.
Okay. Sitting together in silence.
Hot.
Okay. That wraps up Hot or Not, Married Edition. And that kind of brings us to the end of the podcast. So if someone tells you that, I don't know, I just didn't feel a spark, I don't know if I want to see them again, what is your final piece of advice for them?
I think I go back to giving people chances and giving the spark the opportunity to develop. And then again, not over relying on it as time goes on and finding those shared values and having that be what you lean on versus the spark.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. So I think kind of like concluding thoughts, like I think the spark is something that does exist. It like can be there. I think we should not accept it at face value though. I think it's really something to question because I feel like the spark could be pointing to potential chemistry, but I don't think chemistry always equals compatibility. And I don't think it should be the final word in your dating decisions. I think you really need to look to other things like we talked about, like values and lifestyle and kind of like what you want to build. Because I think people are expecting the spark to do all the work. And I think maybe it can get you there for like that first step. But then after it like burns out, you need a backup plan.
I love that framing of it being like one little piece in the tapestry of dating. And it's
The
not like
tapestry of your dating story.
it's not the thing that like determines whether it works or not.
Totally. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast and being pod besties this morning. And thank everyone else for coming on another date with Drew and Jacob. If you have a dating dilemma, a situationship story, or just something that you need to vent about, you can send your questions into Dear Drew. You can send that in on any social media platform on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Substack. The handle is The Realistic Romantic. And if you want to email it in, you can email it in at heyrealisticromantic@gmail.com. That's HEY realisticromantic@gmail.com. And finally, if you are interested in being one of the first people to access the Realistic Romantic app, you can get VIP early access at the link below by joining the waitlist. Kind of what we talked about, the first step of this app is really building out what your relationship values are and learning to date yourself before you date other people. As always, please make sure to rate, follow, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends. That really helps as I'm building out the platform. And remember, date without delusion.